Hi there, and welcome to Backstage with Speaking Your Brand. I'm Carol Cox, founder and CEO of Speaking Your Brand, and I have with me today Diane Diaz, our lead speaking coach.
Hello, everybody.
And we are talking today in the spirit of Valentine's Day, Galentine's Day, how to love your audience. We are dressed in red, of course, because we have to be in theme. And so yeah, we have like all of our little
Yeah,
little
accoutrement.
accessories. Yes,
Yeah.
accoutrements to make sure that we are in theme today. And we're going to talk about how to love our audiences. And the reason where you want to talk about this today, especially, is because the more connected the people and our audiences feel to us and to each other, the more impactful and memorable our presentations and talks will be. And then also, the more value they'll get, the more learning that they'll be able to apply to whatever it is your topic is. And here's the thing about loving our audiences. I really see it that it's about relationship. We're building relationships with our audiences. And this can mean audiences you're developing on your podcast, on your own LinkedIn live show. So, audiences that you're nurturing over time. It can also be audiences that you only see one time for one speaking engagement, whether it's virtual or in person, but you're still building a relationship with them. And I really see this idea of us as speakers building relationships as a little bit different than what a lot of people think about with public speaking, which tends to be the focus is on the speaker, like literally the
Mhm.
spotlight is on
Right.
the speaker and all the value and the information and things that we can provide. But then we forget about us being there in service to our audiences. So I want to really have us focus on that today. And we will be taking your questions and your comments along the way. So if you have questions, we'd also love to hear from you how you love your audiences. Again, whether it's virtual presentations or in person, there are ways to do that. So make sure to say hi if you are joining us live here, or if you're joining us in the replay, let us know so that we can say hi back. All right,
Yes.
Diane, let's dig into, we have 3 ways that we're going to share with you today as far as how you can love your audience. The first one is showing vulnerability. Diane, do you want to talk a little bit about what that means for you as far as showing vulnerability, ways that you've done that, and the ways that you've seen some of our clients do it?
Yes. Well, I think one of the first things to keep in mind is that the audience wants you to be open and honest and vulnerable. It's not unlike if you are just even if you aren't speaking, when you have a business, you are serving your customers, serving your clients, and you're trying to make that, like you said, establish that relationship, right? And so when you're speaking, I think one of the first things to keep in mind is sharing stories that show your vulnerability. It doesn't mean that you have to share super deep, dark, personal things, but when you share something about yourself, it humanizes you to your audience and they make a stronger connection with you and then they can relate. And then that naturally helps them to take in whatever knowledge or information that you're sharing with them or to be inspired by your message because they know you've been there, you experienced something, you're human, you're vulnerable. So I think that's the first thing to keep in mind. And it can be scary, but the audience wants you to succeed. They want to support you so that when you share stories like that, they're going to be there for you. And I know this has come up a lot with our clients. We've had clients sometimes say, well, they might have had a very emotional story to tell and they think, or they say to us, oh gosh, I'm afraid to tell this story because I'm afraid I might break down. I'm afraid I might cry. I'm afraid I might get emotional. But I always tell them, and I know you do too, that's okay. It is okay for you to show emotion. There's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, it's honesty, right? It's honesty, it's vulnerability, it shows your human side. And I think it would be strange if you shared a very personal story and there was absolutely no emotion behind that, right? So I think audiences pick up on that and everybody can identify with that emotional feeling. And so it is okay if the story becomes a little emotional and makes you emotional while you're telling it. It's totally natural and normal and it's completely okay. And the audience will support you. And in fact, I would say they would probably bond with you even more deeply.
Yes, and I'm thinking about this idea of vulnerability and sharing stories and relationship and us again building relationships with our audiences, whether it's long-term relationships or just in that one day that we happen to be speaking with them. And really relationships are about intimacy. And I don't mean that kind of intimacy, people. It is Valentine's Day, but that's not the kind
Keep
of
it clean.
intimacy I'm
Keep it
talking.
clean.
We're
It's a
keeping it
family
clean
show.
here. It is. But intimacy is developed. Like think about close friendships that you've
Yes.
had. I mean, think about when you were in high school and college, and then all the way through to the present day.
Right.
Close friendships develop because you're willing to share the hard
Mhm.
stories and sometimes the hard times with those friends. And so it doesn't mean that everyone in your audience is going to become your BFF. Like that's
Right.
that's not what you're doing. And you're also not using your audience as a therapy session,
Right.
right? Yeah. Like there has to be a purpose behind the stories that you're sharing, drawing and connecting them to the bigger lesson that you're sharing for the audience's benefit. But it's really that the vulnerable stories, those emotional stories, is what creates that intimacy. And then that's what nurtures those relationships.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
All right. So then, and again, if you're listening to us either in the live or in the replay, let us know if this is resonating with you and if you've ever tried sharing a vulnerable story or personal story and what the reaction has been from the audience. And also, how did you feel after
Yes.
doing so?
Oh, yeah. The vulnerability hangover, right?
Oh, yes. Sometimes it happens. Like you second guessed yourself, like, oh,
Yes.
should I have said that? And I will say probably 99.9% of the time, yes, you should have
Yes.
said it.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
All right. So let us talk about then. That was number one, which is showing vulnerability. And that's really through stories that you share. And then the second way to love your audience is really to think about what your audience needs in the moment. So obviously, we help our clients create their signature talk, their keynote talks, their workshops, whatever it is that they're doing for their business and for the audiences that they're speaking to. So they'll have their content mapped out, their opening story, their closing story, their key points, their supporting points, their client examples, their third-party credibility, like we bake it all in. And then sometimes you'll get to a speaking engagement and you realize that joke that you were going to tell in the opening maybe is not the right moment for that particular joke, or the question you were going to ask for your audience is just not the right one, or that story you were going to share, because
Mhm.
every audience, number one, has its own personality. I know, Diane, you have seen, like, we'll have the same exact
Yes.
presentation, and we've seen this a lot virtually because with COVID, that's all we've been doing. You give one presentation to one group and then you give
Mhm.
it to a different group,
Oh,
totally different
yes.
responses.
Mhm.
So that will happen. And then sometimes there'll be maybe something that went on in the news or
Right.
something that went on in that particular group. Maybe you're facilitating a workshop for a company or for an association and something is going on. And you have to be mindful to address the
Mhm.
needs of the audience in that moment. They may need to share about what's going
Right.
on. So you may need to throw out a whole section of your fantastic key points and strategies because it's not going to serve your audience in that moment. They need something different from you. And as Diane and I were kind of brainstorming the topics, the points for this LinkedIn Live right now, we thought about two examples. For us, was back when the pandemic started. Yes, almost 2 years ago now.
Oh my gosh.
Hard to believe. Is that when the pandemic started, we had to make a rapid pivot for the clients we were working with to help them transition their in-person presentations
Mhm.
into a virtual version that was going to make it as impactful for their audiences, and also so that our clients would feel good about presenting it. So obviously we had to address their needs in the moment, and we couldn't just pretend that the
No.
pandemic didn't exist and all these speaking events were being canceled. So we had to face reality with that. And then the second example we came up with was, sadly, after George Floyd was killed in May of 2020, we did the podcast episode together after that called, what was it called, by white women and
Oh my gosh, I
racism.
can't remember. Yeah.
Something
Why
like that, yeah. So it's been a moment, and I'll go back and find that one. Let me see. That was in the work of anti-racism as white women. That
Yes,
was
yes.
episode 175 on the Speaking Your Brand podcast. So we did that right away because we really wanted to talk through what what we were feeling and thinking, and how the work that we could do as white women
Mhm.
for towards anti-racism. And then the other thing was that we decided to run a book club for our clients using the book Me and White Supremacy by
Yes.
Layla Saeed. And I think it was 6 or 8 weeks long. We met
Mhm.
every single week. It was free. We didn't charge our clients extra for this. We invited current and past clients to participate with us. They got so much value out of it. They were so appreciative of us doing that because we were serving our audience in the moment with
Mhm.
what they needed, and frankly, what we needed too. It really was
Right.
for their benefit, but also really helped us too.
Mhm.
And so when you really, think about your role as a speaker, and I've talked about this a lot on the Speaking Your Brand podcast, is that you really are a leader. You're a role model for your audience. And so you have to kind of be in tune, just like any good leader is with their team, be in tune to your audience. What do they need in the moment? What's going to facilitate not just them learning whatever it is that's in your workshop or in your keynote, but what's really going to serve the needs that they have that's going to help them take the next step with whatever
Mhm.
that may happen to be.
Yes.
All right. And now let's go on to the third way to love your audience. So the first way was to show vulnerability. The second way is to be mindful of what your audience needs in the moment. And now the third thing.
This
And
one's
then
fun.
this one is a lot of fun. I share this example in our Thought Leader Academy when we're delivering the training to our clients on delivery. So like how to deliver your speech and and do the things on stage and what have you. So the third way to show love to your audience is to let your audience show their love back to you. So
And
let the audience
accept it.
yeah, and accept it. So let your audience show their appreciation and gratitude for you as a speaker. So before I share my specific example of this, let's kind of do a little scenario here. So Diane, imagine that I give you a gift for your
Right.
birthday or for Valentine's Day, let's say. And then what would be a way that you would respond to that gift that would not be in a loving manner?
Well, I might say, "I don't want this gift." That obviously is not very loving. Or I might just open it and then walk away, which would be very weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Or maybe you would just hand it back and be like, no,
Like
thanks. I'm not
yeah,
into this.
exactly.
And no, I think most of us had been brought up that like you accept the gift graciously, even if you
Yes.
already have it, even if it's the
Yes.
ugliest sweater you've ever seen, even if it's like not something that you need. You're just like, thank you so much. And then you regift it. Hopefully you
Yeah,
remember.
right. After the appropriate amount of time.
Another right, exactly. All right. So here's the example. I was presenting at a conference. This is about 5 years ago now, in person. So, on a stage, and there's about 100, 120 women in the audience. And my talk was about an hour long. And then we had time after my main content part of my talk for a separate kind of Q&A. And they were working on a workbook that was part of the conference. So I had contributed sections for the workbook. So I delivered my whole talk and I wrapped up with my ending story and I said thank you. And the women in the audience started applauding, right? Because they liked it, which is great. And
And then
then and so then what I do, I didn't like receive the applause or the appreciation. I just like hurriedly like walked over to where the podium was on the side of the stage, grabbed the workbook. I was like, all right, everyone, let's open to page 15 and let's work on the workbook. And like for me, I was like, well, like I just want to get back to the task, right?
Right.
And then I'm so appreciative. There was a woman in the audience, and I didn't know her before the conference. There was a
Mm.
woman in the audience, and she came up to me later the day or the next day and said, Carol, I loved your talk, super inspiring. There's just one thing. And I'm like, oh no, like what? Like, what is it? She's like, well, when you finished and everyone was applauding, you kind of just like ran away. And I was like, "Oh, did I? Okay." Like, cool. She's like, "Well, you didn't allow your audience to give the gift back of appreciating
Mhm.
what you just gave to them." And I was like, "Wow, I never thought of it that way." And then I think like I go to the ballet, I go to see plays, and what do we do
Yes.
at the end? We applaud the performers.
Mhm.
And what do the performers do?
They stand on the stage and take all of it in.
Right. They take their bows, the
Yes.
flowers get thrown on the
Right.
stage. Can you imagine if you went to a performance and even like concerts, like they come back for an encore,
Yeah.
go to a performance and the ballet, they just kind of like leave the stage at the end of the song and they don't come back and
Right.
everyone's applauding. You'd be like, where did they
It's
go?
weird. Yeah. Don't they want
Because
this?
as the audience, like, it's an energetic exchange
Yes.
with the audience and the performers, and you as a speaker, as the performer, and you're
Yes.
denying the audience that energetic exchange when you just literally like run off the stage. So don't do
Yes.
that.
Yes, don't do that. I think too from the speaker's standpoint, sometimes it can feel very awkward to just stand there and let people applaud you because we don't necessarily consider ourselves to be quote unquote performers. So it feels very awkward and uncomfortable. But I think if you do it a couple of times and you just stand there for a few minutes and you don't have to really do much of anything except you could just smile and nod your head and mouth thank you, and that's sufficient. But I think it just takes practice to get used to that.
It does. It still feels awkward to me. I actually
Yes.
notice now if I'm watching a movie or a TV show and there is someone giving some type of performance, and then
Mhm.
they'll stand there and they'll say their thing. I'm like, oh my God, I just want to run off the stage. So
It
that's
is
a work in
uncomfortable.
progress. I'm a
Yes.
work in progress.
Yeah.
All right. So, those were our 3 ways to love your audience. Show vulnerability through stories. Be mindful of what your audience needs in the moment, and let your audience show their appreciation and gratitude back to
Yes.
you when you're done. And really, this is about building that relationship with your
Mhm.
audience, thinking about serving your audience and what they need, and having that energetic exchange with them.
Yes.
All right, Diane, thank you so much for joining me on this
Yeah.
LinkedIn Live. For those of you watching and listening, if you would like to work together on your thought leadership and your signature talk and on your delivery so that you don't run off the stage, you are invited to apply for our Thought Leader Academy. Our spring enrollment is open for a March 15th start date. We would love to see your application come through. You submit the application, and then we schedule a Zoom call with you to talk through your application, answer any questions you have, and then make sure that the Thought Leader Academy is the best fit for you. You can get all the details and apply by going to speakingyourbrand.com/academy. Again, that's speakingyourbrand.com/academy. We actually have the group that started last October of 2021 is graduating February 15th, so tomorrow,
Yeah.
as of this LinkedIn Live. And I have just loved seeing the progress that they've made working on their signature talks,
Mhm.
putting their thought leadership message out there consistently
Yes.
to their audiences. And I can't wait to see the new group of women who join us.
Yes. They're going to be fantastic as always.
They are. Well, thank you, Diane, for joining me today
Thanks,
on
Carol.
LinkedIn Live. We do our LinkedIn Live show every other Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to join us right here on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thanks.